Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Remember, Zoom won't let me unmute you all, so you have to do that yourselves.
Morning.
Good morning. A couple of housekeeping things. First of all, a welcome to our dear friend Karen, who is a fellow shaman with Andrea and Lori. And Karen, it is wonderful to have you with us. Karen joined us for the introduction to Zen this morning and has been with me for the whole shebang here. So makes for a long morning, Karen.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
And for this portion, you can sit comfortably. You don't have to be in Zazen, so you can move to your couch or whatever you want, okay?
Okay.
And then also I wanted to mention that for Karen and John, anybody that has done the introduction to Zen in a virtual mode and has not received this book, Zen Meditation in Plain English, just make sure we have your address, and it's part of that introduction session is you get this book, which is a really lovely and simple primer on Zen meditation. So send that through. And Tennessee, you have to officially do the intro again. Because I saw you going, wait a minute, I don't have that.
I
Anyway.
do indeed have it, and I did do the intro.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, well then I'm wrong. I'm sorry. Apologies. Welcome back.
It's a great book. I love it.
Pardon me?
I said it's a great book.
Yeah. Welcome back, Valerian. It's nice to have you on the screen. So, and I think Chalet is going to be rejoining us in a moment. Melissa is out for the 4th. So thank you everybody for showing up this morning.
Mm-hmm.
This morning I wanted to work with case 6 in the Mumonkan, which is Buddha holds up a flower. And there's a couple of reasons for choosing this case. It has been a big week here, I would say, at Prajna Heart Zen Center. You know, I have the great privilege of working with all of you in interview and private sessions and through our Monday night directional meetings and our Tuesday evening book clubs. Let me take care of a couple of technical things here. And there's been a lot going on with everybody today, this week, in a beautiful way. And I think that this koan encompasses a lot of what we've been looking at together and experiencing together. So let me just start with the case and the commentary and the verse. I'm going to do this in a classic fashion because it's a short and deceptively simple koan, but there's a lot here. So the case. Once in ancient times, when the world-honored one was at Mount Gurdrakuta, he held up a flower, twirled it, and showed it to the assemblage. At this, they all remained silent. Only the venerable Kashyapa broke into a smile. The world-honored one said, I have the eye treasury of the true Dharma, the marvelous mind of nirvana, the true form of no form, the subtle gate of the Dharma. It does not depend on letters, being specially transmitted outside all the teachings. Now I entrust Mahakashyapa with this. I'm going to repeat that just real quickly. Once in ancient times, when the world-honored one, that's Shakyamuni Buddha, was at Mount Gurdrakuta, he held up a flower, twirled it, and showed it to the assemblage. At this, they all remained silent. Only the venerable Kashyapa broke into a smile. The world-honored one said, I have the eye treasury of the true Dharma, the marvelous mind of nirvana, the true form of no form, the subtle gate of the Dharma. It does not depend on letters being specially transmitted outside all the teachings. Now I entrust Mahakashyapa with this. The commentary from Mumonkan is the golden-faced Gautama insolently suppressed noble people and made them lowly. He sells dog's flesh under the label of sheep's head. I thought there should be something of particular merit in it. If at that time, however, all those attending had smiled, how would the eye treasury of the true Dharma have been transmitted? Or if Kashyapa had not smiled, how would he have been entrusted with it? If you say that the eye treasury of the true Dharma can be transmitted, then that is as if the golden-faced old man is swindling country people at the town gate. If you say it cannot be transmitted, then why did Buddha say he entrusted only Kashyapa with it? And then finally the verse. In handling a flower, the tail of the snake manifested itself. Kashyapa breaks into a smile. Nobody on earth or in heaven knows what to do. Okay, so what's going on here? First, a little bit of historical background. Mahakashyapa or Kashyapa was one of the original 10 disciples of Shakyamuni Buddha. After Buddha's death, he became what's described as the orthodox successor of Buddha, meaning that for about the next 20 years, he headed up the monastic practice of the students that had studied under Buddha. So he was like the formal head of the practice. So this transmission of the Dharma from Shakyamuni to Kashyapa is no small thing. It's significant in the history. There's question about this koan, whether it's actually historical fact or whether it's a parable or story written to express the point. But the heart of this koan is really about transmission. And we've talked a fair amount about enlightenment and transmission in the past weeks, partly as we've been studying Zen, the Authentic Gate. One of our chapters this last week was about finding an authentic teacher. The other was about levels of enlightenment, right? Or depths of enlightenment. What are the different depths of enlightenment? And in this case, the world-honored one simply holds up a flower. Simply holds up a flower and twirls it. So, what is Buddha doing there? And what happens in this? Well, this goes to another part of the koan. Another way of looking at the koan is about samadhi, or a state of enlightenment, and the different types and levels of samadhi. So there's absolute samadhi, which is that state of oneness with everything, the 10,000 things in all the 10 directions, right? When Buddha had that moment of realization and upon seeing Venus in the morning sky and proclaimed that he and everyone and everything had attained the way simultaneously. So absolute samadhi is that moment when everything drops away. There's no subject and object, as Yamada says. Everything falls away. We are in nirvana, a state of oneness and peace with everything. Now, absolute samadhi is a beautiful place to be, but in absolute samadhi, there's no relative, there's no phenomenal world, there's no way to move things around, so to speak. You can't drive your car in absolute samadhi. So there's also what is referred to as positive samadhi. And that is samadhi, or the state of enlightenment in relation to objects, in relation to other things, right? That's sometimes seen as total involvement with another object or activity. And in our modern parlance, kind of the vernacular, we talk about getting lost in something, getting completely lost in something. Karen and I were talking this morning, and she talked about getting lost in gardening or on a hike, finding herself not there, seemingly lost in it. This is the province of artists who pick up a paintbrush and attack the canvas and find themselves seemingly disappeared, or musicians, or for those of an athletic bent, when you go off the top of a double black diamond into deep powder, all of a sudden you're gone, right? And we talk about getting lost. I was lost in the beauty of the moment. I was lost in the activity. And one of the interesting things about this is, even though the activity is voluntary, like we choose to do the activity, the samadhi, or the getting lost in it, is essentially, in a way, involuntary. It's like we dive into the activity and we lose ourselves in it. So there's another type of positive samadhi with an object or activity, which is voluntary, which means this is us as Buddha choosing to step into oneness with whatever situation, object, person, activity that is there in front of us. This is where we voluntarily just are able to go there. Okay, so it's not something that happens to us or takes it away, but it's the ability to go there. And the ability to go there at will comes out of developing a deep and regular Zazen practice of Zazen, because in Zazen we can experience the absolute. And from the absolute, then we can choose to step back into the relative world from that place of the absolute. In the commentary of the Mumonkan from Cicada's book, it's written, voluntary samadhi can be attained first through absolute samadhi, which constitutes the essential foundation. Being well practiced in absolute samadhi, you can enter positive samadhi at will. Truly, it is a delightful thing. Fixing your eyes upon it, a blade of grass, even a stone at the roadside, begins to shine with the beauty of its essential nature. You are in the closest intimacy with the object. And when this happens, all of a sudden, the beauty of an onion reveals itself. The beauty of a flower is right there, the oneness of it. So Buddha twirling the flower is an act of positive samadhi. And who in the assemblage could recognize it? Everybody remained silent, except for one, Kashyapa, who involuntarily broke into a smile. Because everything was right there. It was all one. So we have in this koan a demonstration of this state, and then an involuntary recognition of it by Kashyapa. And then we also have the recognition of that by Buddha, who then says, I now entrust this student with the Dharma. So that's the other side of this koan. It's all about transmission. And it's transmission outside of the book and book club. It's transmission outside of the sutras. It's transmission outside of the vows that we just vowed. These are all containers for it, but that transmission is an occurrence. And the occurrence is acknowledged by the teacher. The transmission of the Dharma is of self-realization, something that is our birthright and each of us can realize on our own. It is not given by the teacher. It is not gotten by the student. It is not grabbed or achieved. It is something that is earned through the practice and all of a sudden manifests. And when it manifests, it is recognized and it is complete. Yeah, beyond words, beyond concepts, beyond the sutras. So now what about the commentary? The golden-faced Gautama insolently suppressed noble people and made them lowly. He sells dog's flesh under the label of sheep's head. Now this is about there's nothing to give or get. So as a teacher, you get a certain color of Raksu, a certain color of Kesa, you attain all this and you're put in this role, but you're really selling dog's flesh. You're selling the ordinary, in other words, right? This is here, it's for everybody. It's right in front of us. It's here all the time. It's for anyone to recognize and realize on their own. And so here the commentary is, oh yeah, there's Buddha packaging up dog's meat like mutton, as though it's something special, right? And appearing like a common peddler at the town gate trying to sell something. That's what this commentary is about. And then in typical Lupi Zen fashion, if you say that the eye treasury of the true Dharma can be transmitted, right? That is like saying he's a common peddler at the gate. If you say it cannot be transmitted, then why did the Buddha say he only entrusted Kashyapa with it? So can it be transmitted or can it not be transmitted? It can't be transmitted by the teacher. It is transmitted and it is acknowledged. It can't be received by the student. It is realized and manifested. And then in that moment, it all becomes clear and the Dharma continues for the next generation of the 2,500 years. There's some language in the commentary, or in the case. I have the eye treasury of the true Dharma, the marvelous mind of nirvana, the true form of no form, the subtle gate of the Dharma. Partly this is a translation difficulty, like how do you translate first into Chinese and then to English? What do all of these words mean? I have the eye treasury of the true Dharma, the marvelous mind of nirvana, the true form of no form, the subtle gate of the Dharma. Is this Shakyamuni being egotistical, going, I have it? It's mine? No, again, this is the manifestation that is available to each of us. And that a good number of us have actually experienced and seen this week. I'm not going to name names, right? But there has been a lot of this going on for whatever reason in the Prajna Heart Sangha this week. The true I, the true treasury I, the I treasury of the true Dharma has manifested itself. And it's as simple as the flower or the actions in front of us. Dogen said, the subtle Dharma of the seven Buddhas is maintained with its true significance when it is rightly transmitted by an enlightened disciple following an enlightened master. This is beyond the knowledge of the priests of letters and learning. This passage makes it very obvious that the most important thing a Zen student can do is to make sure he or she is studying under an authentic teacher. And we talked about that on Tuesday night as well, too, right? The importance of a Sangha, the importance of the teacher, the importance of the teacher working with an authentic teacher, right? And that this happens outside of the vestments and the robes and the priest or no priest and the sutras or no sutras. And I would be remiss if I didn't channel my Zumi at this point through tension and say more Zazen. I think it was Philip and I had that moment this week. More Zazen. Or Ken, was it you? Or was it Chile? Or was it Andrea? Because it all comes down to, there was it John? More Zazen. Okay, great. Now what? Because we need to keep scrubbing those bowls. We need to keep moving the dust off the mirror, removing the detritus so that the flower can appear. And that's it. It's so simple. And as the newsletter put out there, and there it is, right before you, precisely where it has always been. Buddha held up a flower and twirled it. How do you see it? How do you see it? I'm going to stop there and open it up to questions, comments, our usual wonderful Prajna sharing, anywhere you guys want to go, and you'll need to raise your hand and unmute yourself because of the new Zoom security protocols. Yeah. I see Valerian moving. Go ahead, go for it, Valerian. Unmute yourself. There you go. You had it. There you go.
And now I've unmuted myself. Good morning, everyone. So last night I was watching the series The Last Dance, which, for those who don't know, is a documentary series that was on probably about a month or so ago about Michael Jordan and his last year of being a competitive basketball player. So he's won 3 championships. He ended up winning another 3 championships, and this series is about that period between the 5th and 6th championship, knowing that he was going to retire along the whole way. And it's just this, wonderful, wonderful journey through his career, and really focusing on this one unique part in history. And going back to what you were saying, so much of, obviously you see the result, you see his greatness, you know his name, you still know Air Jordan and the shoes and the McDonald's and all of this. And at base, he's a pretty unremarkable person, I think, and he would probably be one of the first to admit this. He was 6'6", which in basketball terms is not very big. His first years, he was gifted, meaning that he obviously had a God-given talent, but it wasn't until he took the act of consistent repetition, which kind of took it from, okay, I have this skill, to, okay, now I'm going to be Michael Jordan, over just completely dominant in this world on so many different planes, from business to basketball, obviously. But so much of it was just based on that simple act of repetition. So going back to, what do you need? Zazen, more Zazen. That's really all it is, applied to a point where that repetition, you can translate that into confidence in everyday activities. So when you talk about, being in the zone, part of that is simply having that base of repetition to be able to access that in that individual any given moment, and that's what translated him into Air Jordan, right? As opposed to just a guy who plays basketball named Michael.
Well said.
Thank you, Valerian.
That's amazing. I want to see that.
Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful, absolutely beautiful story.
That's so true. Everybody who becomes an expert at something, somebody was talking about I guess it was some research had been done on people who had become experts at, some form of creativity and expression, or, playing a game or something along those lines. And it takes something like 10,000 repetitions of an act to make it so that you're no longer thinking about it. It just becomes part of your body, part of your breath, part of your being, part of your molecular structure. And that sounds exactly
the 10,000 hour rule.
Yeah, exactly. So get ready.
Tennessee, anything else since you were unmuted?
I mean, no, I'm just listening. I have something to say at the end of this about Monday night, but I'd love to hear more about what people want to talk about.
Great.
Quiet morning.
Quiet morning.
That's Ken.
Ken, go for it.
Thank you, Shiro and Akasha. Dan, I was wondering if it's always in front of me, is that why I'm constantly stumbling?
Is that why you're constantly
Stumbling.
stumbling? Could be, my friend.
I have a feeling it is.
Could be. But this also goes to the question you asked, or the observation you made last week about wanting to listen, and my gentle challenge to you about how you listen with your hands when you're doing your body work, right?
Mm.
So in that sense, you experience this all the time of it being right there in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
I love this koan because it really speaks to the accessibility of this lofty thing called enlightenment,
Mm-hmm.
and the power of the practice once you start getting some agility to just simply put it into action with whatever you are doing at the moment, the most simple of things, whether it's with your spouse or playing with a child or walking the dog or preparing a meal or walking around the room in kinhin, or anything that we do. When you can bring this kind of awareness and clarity to it, there's almost an indescribable joy. And the other reason this koan came up for me this week, as I said, is I just wanted to celebrate you guys. Collectively, I wanted to celebrate the Sangha and all of the hard work that everybody is doing, and some of the beautiful breakthroughs that people have had and shared.
Mm.
Because it's right there. It's right there. And it doesn't depend on me or Tension or Lori or, it doesn't depend on that. We're all here to help support that for each other. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say, I really appreciate your talking about this koan today and explaining it a little bit further for me. Can you hear me all right? I have some trouble, have been, and about approaching this through like a scholarly lens, which maybe overplayed a little. Like I don't have that big of a background of of studying Buddhism from an academic perspective, but I have some, and some about the history of Buddhism. And so sometimes I get trapped a little bit between like, okay, what really happened, and what is the legend, what is the mythology of it, and this koan, is like a perfect example of like, it doesn't fucking matter, like shut up, to me, because it's like you're totally missing the point, of this beautiful moment of like, well, it's just right here. Like these other things don't matter. Like you can get stuck in your head for a million years, and you can dissect things from a million angles, and that just has nothing to do with the transmission or with that moment. And I don't know if I was one of those people that you were talking about, Dan, but I certainly had a very Zen moment on Tuesday, where I was completely caught up in a moment that there was no separation between me and what was happening. It was my double black diamond that I didn't know I was going on that suddenly was there for me, and I was in it. You can't beat that. And the other thing I wanted to say, and I can't remember exactly what you said about it, but it struck me. And it was about samadhi and my experience with other kinds of Buddhism, and this idea in other kinds of Buddhism where, like, oh, I know what it was, where it's like in other forms of Buddhism, like that I didn't practice very religiously, but very disciplined, in a disciplined way, but like my experiences with meditation were like I would reach a certain state and I would kind of be happy there. I would like clear my brain of thoughts, and then I would like reach the state and I would kind of be in like what I thought was a Zen-like state at the time. I was at peace. I had the equanimity part, but what I didn't have was the connection with the phenomenal world. What I didn't have was, I had it out there. I had what I had that peace, but how do you bring that peace into, driving your car or whatever? You're like interacting with the world, it's not separate. It's not like this separate thing where you're like up here in meditation. Am I making sense? So that just struck me as like, oh, that's what that was. There was like that piece, but there wasn't the element of like, well, how do I bring that into my life? And how do I practice that with people that I meet? And, because we live in the world. We don't live on cloud nine.
And that is a fundamental transmission of the Dharma too. Tennessee is the way you are in the world. And I would put a little correction into what you said when you said, I don't know if you were talking about me, but I had a very Zen moment. You had a very Tennessee moment.
That is true.
Yeah,
That's true.
It's true for each of us.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Galen, was I saying Gautama or however you say that? Am I saying that correctly or butchering it?
So, I don't know.
I kept looking at it and go, well, I'm just going to say something.
This word.
I think this is a great koan too. I have to admit, I keep being reminded that, I've had a moment or two in my practice of clarity, and I'm so thankful that I have a teacher that's willing pretty much to go, yeah, well, throw it away because you're hung up on it, don't stay there, I really, it's so important to have, for Kashyapa to have the verification so everybody else knows where to go if the Buddha's not around and they have to have a question. But what's key to that, to the moment, to the absolute samadhi of Gautama is that the peak experience is not the story that's most important in the Buddha's life.
Right.
You know, the most important thing that we can learn from the Buddha is that after having that moment and believing that it was impossible to transmit, I don't believe people will understand me if I tell them.
Mm-hmm.
Then he spent 40 years trying to tell them, or trying to show them, or selling dog meat, or whatever, however you want to put it. The effort of the significance of the Buddha is what happened after that, that experience. And and it's not, it's a story just like everybody else's life. It's not. And then and then he rose to nirvana on a lotus leaf, and this, it's nothing like that. He died by the road from dysentery. After trying for 40 years to pass on the message.
And here we are.
Here we are. Apparently got part of the message. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Galen.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And as our teacher Tenshin says, part of it is finding the people that will continue to show up, continue to do the work, continue to step off the 100-foot pole in the effort to share the Dharma, whether they have dysentery or not. So nicely put. Karen, I don't know if you can unmute yourself, but we had a great conversation this morning. Does this start addressing some of that for you?
It does. It does. I'll tell you. It's interesting. It's not. It doesn't surprise me that I'm here with you today. Doing my practice through the years with what I do and how I relate to the world, and how I allow things and experiences to come, and how I ask for experiences to come, is very different than what I'm experiencing here with you. My experiences are very kind of difficult, actually, in a lot of ways. And I'll give you an example. I had asked for, I'm trying to go through a doorway, and a doorway with my, I don't know if I can explain this very well. I'm just gonna do my best, okay? With my pituitary gland, okay? So this is something that's kind of new to me, because my other teacher, who Lori knows, Jose, was talking about the pituitary in a talk this week, and also the hypothalamus, and how we have to try to really unlock that. And so one of the things that I was doing, and right after that talk, was when I went to bed, was and I do this often, I ask for a dream, for guidance or for information of something that I need, or something that I want to know, or whatever the case may be. If I need to dream about somebody because they have a question, or I might want to help them. Anyway, so the dream on that particular night, the first night that I was focusing on opening the door or finding the door, it was quite terrifying. What happened was I ended up in Budapest, somewhere I've never been. I'm like, Budapest of all places, you know. I have no desire to go there, no really interest in that, but that's where I was. And I was on a beach, and my daughter was with me. And I was about probably 30 feet from her, and she was facing the ocean. I was behind her, and I saw she stood up and she took a few steps, and then she disappeared. And I ran over, and there was a little girl behind me who couldn't speak. And she kind of knew what had happened, but she couldn't tell me what had happened. But I approached where she had fallen through the sand, and there was quicksand there. And so she had just like slipped through. And I stood there, obviously hysterical, and I was reaching my hand in, trying to grab her, trying to find her, trying to, you know, pull her. And I couldn't do it. But the interesting thing about that was that I didn't go in there. I didn't go in there. I was trying to reach, but I didn't go in there. So I was thinking when I woke up, and I was just like, you know, like, why didn't I go in there to get her? You know, was that, I feel like I have tests all the time, you know, in this practice that I have. It's like a test. It's like, how bad do you want to that? But I didn't realize that was the door probably that I needed to go through to unlock and and I didn't do it. So I feel like I failed that test, right? So then I wake up and I'm beating myself up like I should have gone through that door. How? I don't want to sound like I don't know how I'm sounding. This is who I am.
Don't worry about it.
What?
Don't worry about it.
Okay, I'm not going to worry about it. So I didn't go in there. And if I didn't go in there, it makes me kind of upset just talking about it. If I didn't go in there, you know, for the most important thing in my world, in my life, you know, I could have jumped in there, and I didn't do that, you know? So anyway, when I'm sitting here with you, I didn't even like think to jump in there. You know, it's like my mind didn't even go there. It was upsetting for me, you know? And then here I am sitting here with you, and it's like something clicked, like, Karen, you don't need to jump in the quicksand to go through the door, you know? You don't need to suffer to go through a doorway, you know? The doorway is here, and maybe if I sit here long enough and do this, maybe I can just go through the doorway there, you know? And it doesn't have to be so difficult, you know? That was a very difficult dream.
Yeah. So here, take the flower.
Thank you. You don't need to
That
go
was
in the
so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And it is, I mean, we can't do it through the screen, but there is a simplicity to hear. And tall, you grab the flower, right? And it's yours.
Yeah, I think not needing to suffer. I think that there's like this weird thing in like culturally or societally or whatever, where we think that we need to suffer, that like our suffering, and maybe it's my personal experience with people around me, but like as if like suffering is somehow a gift, like as if suffering is somehow going to accomplish something, you know, like as if I suffer more, then I'm helping more or I care more,
More deserving.
you know.
More deserving.
Yeah, it's wild that, you know, through reducing our own suffering, and that's reducing the world's suffering.
Mm-hmm. Something that you have to earn that. You have to prove that you know, that you're brave, or, you know.
Not good enough. And guess what? You are good enough. We're all raised with I'm not good enough, you know, and raised with thinking that way, and it's just not true.
Oh yeah.
And that's why I always eat the pudding.
There you go.
Pudding. Well, now's as good a time as any. We are meeting on Monday nights at 6 p.m. over Zoom to discuss the center. And anybody is included to join, and many of you are on my list and the email list to get the link for the Zoom meeting and whatever else we might want to say in the email. So if anybody isn't getting the email or would like to get the email, now is a good time to say. And if you want, you can put your email in the chat and I can add you. And everyone is invited.
It's a Monday evening meeting just about where we go as a center and how, and people pitching in to pick up the reins and help out with things. John, anything on the flower of enlightenment here?
Me, John.
Yeah, you, John.
In what way? The flower of enlightenment.
The koan that we just talked about.
You know, something around, back to, it's not about understanding, and it's about, for me, it's about experiencing that. And how do I get there? More Zazen. Repetition. And, allowing what arises. It's like trusting the process. Yeah.
Well said. And trusting the Dharma, trusting this group, Sangha, and Karen, I think you can see already a lot of what this is a Sangha to support each other, support the of the quicksand in us, and whether we judge, whether that's driving in or
Yeah.
I really appreciate having the courage to share with a room full of
Yeah.
Is anybody else getting feedback
there's
from?
I can't hear with that. Okay.
It's been hard to hear you, Dan.
I just muted Karen. Karen, I just muted you accidentally.
Oops. She's fixing it. We hear you now.
All right. I was going to say that I couldn't hear what you were saying because it was cutting in and out.
Yeah. When you're not speaking, please mute yourself. John, I think it was
People in the background.
something in the background there. John was saying more Zazen, and I was saying also that there is the Sangha. John was saying the process, the Dharma. And I was saying there's also the Sangha, and the Sangha continues to be a demonstration of the power of Sangha in supporting each other as we look at the quicksand in front of us and try to understand whether we need to physically dive into it or if we're already on the other side of it. So, and Karen, I was also acknowledging you for the courage of speaking up and telling your story in a room full of supposed strangers, because that's what this Sangha is about.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
So,
it's Andrea. Can you hear me?
yes, we
Can you
can.
hear me? Andrea? Okay. I'm on the road. First, I want to say how happy I was to see Karen this morning. It was so beautiful to see you, and I loved what you shared. And, I think what you shared, it just kind of triggered for me what's going on for me this week. And I was reminded, like when we were in Peru, and we had just had this ceremony, and you were kind of struggling with something, which I'm not, but you looked down and there was that, remember that rock with the heart in it? And it's like, for me, I was just talking about that story with someone last night. It's like, I can look all around and look, and sometimes it's just right there within me. And I think that's what my sitting has done for me, is it's given me the opportunity to, man, people are driving really crazy, giving me the opportunity to stop and know what I want to exhibit is within me. And it's the chatter and the noise and the ego that prevents me at times to behave in the ways and live in the ways that I want to. But when I sit, it gives me that time and space to know it's right there within me. And I loved your story. And I too have found I don't need to be that sacrificial lamb anymore, and to suffer, and in such ways. So I don't know if that made sense, but anyways, I just wanted to say that and say hi to everybody this morning.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thanks, Andrea.
Hi, Andrea. Nice to hear
Thank
you.
you, Andrea. I appreciate that. I loved hearing your voice, and thank you. Thank you.
Be careful out there.
Yes, yes.
All right. Well, we're nearing the end of the hour. Anybody else? Mark, Tall? Anybody? I don't want to cut anybody off at all.
I would add one more thing, if I may. I'll try to be brief. I have a thing with the suffering thing. Last session, which was 7-day session, there was a little bit of a masochist in me wanting to go and throw myself in there and like see what I was made of and see if I had what it took to do 7 days of silent meditation with you all, not having had anywhere near that kind of experience. During the shorter session, I looked across the room at Shley, and she just had this expression of peace on her face. Beautiful smile, and she's sitting there, period after period, just a smile. And I found myself just kind of like a little bit perplexed. And I think I kind of just had this realization of like, oh, somehow I think because Zen is a little bit more of a complex form of Buddhism than I'm used to, or my perception of it is that it's like deeper, like there are more levels of it. But somehow that's prevented me from experiencing the joy that I'm entitled to feel as well. That I somehow, because it's more complex, I feel like I have to suffer and I have to prevent myself from feeling the joy. And I just had this realization of like, oh yeah, you don't have to do that. You can feel the good stuff. It's okay. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you. All right. Well, I think
Exactly 11.
we're exactly at 11, so I will pull the 4 vows back up on the screen, and we'll close this out. We're going with delusions today.
Whoops. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. The dharmas are boundless. I vow to master them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to love.